The Flip 5, the JBL Flip 5, it's a mono speaker. It's got an oval racetrack shape driver, as they like to call it, as they like to market it. It's on the left side. On the Charge 4, it's on the other side. On the Flip 5, it's on the left side. It's off-centered. If you want to be center on to that one driver, you're basically having the JBL logo to your right and you're sitting on the left side of it. It's a bit weird. Some people are saying, well, you know, they've done that because they're made to play better in stereo. My answer to that is, if that's really the case, do what Mini Rig do. Sell them as bundles. Sell a pair of Flip 5s. Have them a bit cheaper than buying two. Not only that, we now get different versions of the same model. In the case of the Flip 5, we've got a CS, we've got a CG, and we've got a TL. CS, as far as I know, is different because it has the plastic driver. What's better, a plastic driver or a paper driver? Well, depends on the quality of the materials, so you can't really answer that. However, my guess would be, given that it's JBL, given that these are budget speakers, if you're getting a plastic cone, or whatever material they're actually using, it's probably because it's cheaper. The cheaper plastic cone is probably not as good as a paper cone. However, there's a lot more to it. And the point of this video is, you're buying a mono, you really want a stereo, so you're going to buy a pair. But is it worth it? Is it a 10% improvement? Because that wouldn't really be worth paying double the money. At the moment, the retail in the UK, £119. Suddenly, you buy two, it's 238 quid. It's not cheap. You're into Extreme 2 territory. You're into bigger speaker territory. So, does it sound like a bigger speaker? So I'm going to try and answer that question in this video. I'm also going to say it's 20 watts. People are saying, yeah, the Charge 3 is also 20 watts. And, you know, that's 3 years older now. So a brand new 20 watt speaker in a smaller package, does it go as loud? Does it play better? Does it go deeper? I'm also going to try and answer that question. So the first thing we want to know is, you've got one, you add the second, what difference does it make? My recordings are at 60% volume because that's the sweet spot for this particular speaker before you start losing the bass.
I live my life on the run. I say I'm not giving up. I may be living alone, but I still believe in love. In a similar way, I feel I'm losing my conscience. Traveling for days without my knowledge of provenance. Throughout my life, you called me a renegade. Throughout my loves, you said we could start again, but I'm a renegade of your love. But I'm a renegade of your love. Renegade of your love.
Looks like we've come to the end of the road. There's no point in running away now. I'd rather sleep until the storm is gone. She'd rather be shooting at me now. I know it will end up in anger. I don't think we grew up, we just became older. She's aiming her words, ready to fire. I don't think that bullets will bring back desire. I don't think that bullets will bring back desire. I don't think that bullets will bring back desire. I don't think that bullets will bring back desire. Looks like a blink of an eye's not enough. She'd rather be staying for days now. I'd rather fix it than mess up again. She'd rather be burning it all now. just became older. She's aiming her words, ready to fire. I don't think that bullets will bring back desire. It fades into the night. Coyotes sing at the moonlight. These open highways are calling our name, and now it's time for us to escape. Feel the wind touch our face. Let's take a spin to a foreign place. These open highways are calling our name, and now it's time for us to escape. Escape to a world we don't know. Escape into the great unknown. Escape to a world we don't know. Escape into the great unknown. Let's escape. Let's escape. Let's escape.
So the difference between a single Flip 5 and a stereo Flip 5 is crazy big. It's huge, the difference. So remember, if you double the power, if you go from 20 watts of a single to 40 watts of two Flip 5s, you would expect a 3 decibel rise sound pressure levels. You double the power, you add 3 decibels. Difference in the bass between stereo and mono, 9.2 decibels. That is mad. That isn't the difference between adding a second Flip 5. That is a difference in some sort of processing going on, some sort of tuning, something they're doing with the two speakers. It's bringing out a huge dollop of bass. And overall, 5.4 decibels, even on average, across the whole frequency range, on average, 5.4 decibels louder. When you've got the same volume step, you just go from a one mono Flip 5 to stereo Flip 5s, 5.4 decibels louder. Not the 3 decibels on paper that it should or could be at a maximum possible difference. You think this is something to do with processing they're either not doing when you go to a pair or are doing when you go to a pair. Also, you get some improvements at the high end. The mono Flip 5 falling off that cliff, around 13,000 hertz. Stereo extending a bit more. There's definitely more high end, not just going louder, when you add a second Flip 5. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So, a big win. You add the second speaker, you get a lot more slam. It seems to be twice as good, more than twice as good. It seems to be a whole is greater than the sum of the parts, as the saying goes. And to an extent that I wouldn't have expected. There's a big difference, it's huge. At this volume, at 60%, it clearly plays a lot louder. Now, is that the processing? Is that simply, it's playing a notch up even though you haven't changed the volume? A lot of things can come into the variables. Even if I change the volume level of a single Flip 5 in post-processing to match a pair of them, it can match them for volume, but it can't match it for that bass. There's more going on than just going louder. Yeah, albeit, obviously, clearly you have 4 passive radiators now going on. You're going to get more slam. But the difference is big. It's such a more enjoyable listen when you have a pair of them. And it's still, a small package. So that's a big win for a pair. That's a big win for people saying, yeah, look, it's designed, isn't it? It's designed to be used as a pair. Personally, I'm not of that ilk. I don't personally go with that opinion. But, I can't say they're wrong. I have to say that's another way of looking at why they're only putting in a single driver now. Anyway, to really see what's going on, to really know a speaker, you've got to push it. You've got to push it to the max. And this is what happens when I play a mono versus stereo pair at absolute maximum flat out volume. So maximum volume now a bit more in line with what I'm expecting. Average 19.3 across the stereo, 22.6 for a single Flip 5. There is your 3 decibels that you would normally expect. So it's looking like stereo and party mode do play louder at lower volumes. So when you switch at the same volume from a single Flip 5 to a pair of them, it makes it sound even more impressive than it really is. Really, it's the 3 decibel difference you'd expect from doubling the power. However, the peak also, the absolute peaks, about 2.5 decibels louder with the stereo. The bass again, about 3 decibels louder, or just over, in stereo. Now, I did wonder, how did I get such a difference at 60%? I do think it's still that it plays louder at those lower volumes in stereo. However, I checked my 2 versions, my TL version, which is grey, my CS version, which was white, and the one I used at 60%, it is in fact 1 decibel quieter than the TL version. Not only that, so this is the grey one, this is the white one. You can actually see the sound signature is different. On the CS version, there's a bit more upper bass, around 150 hertz mark, than on the TL, but the TL version has much better highs. When I compare them A-B, the TL version does sound brighter than the CS version. So that partly explains the big difference at 60%, although not entirely, as I said. My 2 versions, whether it's sample variations or actually the different versions do play a bit different, this is my experience. The TL version, brighter and a decibel louder across the frequency range, 1.5 decibels louder in the bass on the TL version. So the TL version definitely plays nicer than the CS version. Between my versions, that's certainly the case. So a lot of questions answered there. Now it's more in line with what you'd expect. You double the power, you add 3 decibels. You add a second speaker to a single speaker, it doesn't go twice as loud, not in real terms. It goes a bit louder, it goes 3 decibels louder. To double the actual volume, perceivable volume, you'd have to have a 10 decibel lift. You'd have to have more than a second speaker. But now I'm finding, look, first of all, I did my test with the CS version, the white one. I tested it, it floated. I said, look, the Flip 5 floats. Other people saying, well, no, it doesn't. I said, yes, it does. They said, no, it doesn't. So I tested them both. Well, blow me, my TL version, it drops to the bottom. My CS version floats. So there's a lot going on with these different versions. Not only that, clearly, my white CS version does not sound as nice as my grey TL version. And to show you the difference, here's a recording of each of them at 60%.
I've been stuck on your memory, but it's not like I need it. And you may have some history, but we don't have to repeat it. You made this mess and left me with the pieces. Now I'm gonna burn all the bridges between us.
So 60% volume. To me, there's a big difference listening in person. Depending on how you are listening, you may not be hearing what I'm hearing. However, if I break it down, the CS version apparently has the plastic driver. The TL version, the paper driver. The difference is, in the bass, where it really matters to most people, 2 decibels advantage to the TL version. That's huge. 3 decibels, you've doubled your power. 2 decibels bigger in the bass is a huge difference. When you add to the fact that also, at the high end, and I'm showing, for example here, 10 kilohertz, minus 54, minus 57, 3 decibels. So where it really matters, high end, 3 decibels. The bass, 2 decibels. Makes it a different sound. On my TL paper driver version, it's a much nicer listen. And if I just take the average across the whole frequency response, it's about a decibel. As I had found previously, a decibel louder across the frequency range the Flip 5 TL version plays compared to the CS version. So there isn't a single thing here other than a bit of upper bass around 150 Hertz. On the CS version, it's stronger than on the TL version. But I know what I prefer to listen to, and that's the TL version. As I said, can't be sure this is not just sample variation, but on my sample of 2, the TL version is the one I have, and the CS version, as far as I'm concerned, and don't forget, there's also a CG version knocking about. The CS version is definitely not for me, but it floats. My white CS version, it's a dull listen. My TL grey version is a nice listen. It's night and day for me. When I'm A-Bing and I'm sitting in front of it, there's a big difference in them. There's a big difference in the bass, there's a big difference in the higher frequencies. The white one has a little bit more upper bass. If you live and breathe upper bass, you may prefer the duller sounding white CS version. Now, I'm assuming it's the difference in paper cone, plastic cone. If they're using a cheap plastic cone, the paper cone is going to sound better. I don't know, though, that it's not just sample variability. I'd have to have several speakers to really know what's going on. However, looking back over some threads where people have compared different versions, it does sound like the different cones result in a different sound. Not just the fact that the CS floats. Some people will want the CS version just because it floats, because you want to listen to it in the swimming pool. However, I would say it still doesn't play very well in the swimming pool. Something goes, it seems to let in some water and it's getting muffled. It's not a nice listen, even though nicely the driver is facing up. So, big lesson to me is make sure you get matched speakers when you are buying a pair. So this is a mismatched pair. This will be going back. I don't know whether to get another grey one, and then it's a bit awkward because I like to know the different speakers by the colours, or go for the CG version if I can get hold of one and measure all 3. So I'm not quite sure what to do at this point. However, it's bad news, isn't it, that you buy a Flip 5, everybody's buying a Flip 5, and they're comparing, oh, what does my Flip 5 sound like? And actually, they could sound completely different because they are different models of the same speaker with different materials. Materials is everything in the speaker. So people are saying, oh, it's 20 watts. The JBL Charge 3 is 20 watts. Is that going to sound now better than the Charge 3? Well, is it going to sound better as a pair? This video is all about stereo. So I'm actually going to compare a pair of Flip 5s with a pair of Charge 3s. A lot of people are saying, well, we don't care about the Charge 3. It's an old speaker. It wasn't very good to start with. However, there's a lot of people, I would be one of them, that says they quite like the Charge 3. It has a different nature altogether than most of the modern speakers that have come with the V-shaped tuning. It was more of a laid-back speaker and still pretty decent in its own right. A lot of people hate it, say, oh, it's terrible distortion as you push it. A lot of people are very happy. And as people are asking about this particular speaker, and as I happen to have a pair of this particular speaker, that's why in this video, the comparison is with the 20 watts Flip 5, the 20 watts JBL Charge 3s.
stop us. Fly man, I'm like choppers. Better took those risks, cold blood in my fists, we fire starters. One out of a million will reach those heights. Always been a feeling that I won't deny. That work, never could toss. Look in my eyes, I'm on the rise. But I'm up now, we all too late to fall. Yeah, anyone coming, I'ma lift them all. Never look down when there's risk involved. I got guts, got a lot, I gotta wish it all. Ain't got no feelings, we just floating. Yeah, I'm that grain of sand that made it out the ocean. A couple milli now, I'm causing a commotion. I've been coasting, hear my name around the world like an explosion.
So 2 Charge 3s in stereo plays louder than 2 Flip 5s in stereo. 2 Charge 3s are louder, but the Flip 5s sound smoother. The big difference is between the two, even with this slight difference in volume, when you play it at the same volume step, is the upper bass, where you're going to get some warmth. 2 Flip 5s, even though noticeably quieter, 150 Hz minus 23 decibels, Charge 3s minus 25. So even unadjusted, even if you just leave the volume the same, 2 Flip 5s are 2 decibels louder in the upper bass, which comes over as some warmth. Strictly speaking, 2 Charge 3s go lower, 80 Hz minus 25, Flip 5s 1 decibel quieter at 80 Hz. Charge 3s very mids first, over boosted it a little bit in the mids, makes the Flip 5s with its recessed mids sound smoother. Charge 3s has a little bit better in the way of extended highs. It's a bit more rolled off on the Flip 5s. However, the Flip 5s sound smoother, although quieter. And then if you adjust the volume by a couple of decibel to match the Charge 3s, in other words, you go up a volume step in your listening. The difference is, of course, even more. Minus 25, minus 21.5, about 3.5 decibels louder in the 150 Hz mark. And then it's actually now louder in the 80 Hz mark. So the Charge 3s plays louder, the Flip 5s are smoother. That's better. Upper bass, Charge 3s do go lower, even adjusted. If I take the 50 Hz mark, minus 36 on the Charge 3s, 39 on the Flip 5s, but there's almost nothing in it because the Flip 5s are minus 36 at around 53, 54 Hz. So it's very close even in the lower bass. The Flip 5s do well against 2 Charge 3s. So quite a difference. But 20 watts, 20 watts at 60%, the Charge 3 is playing louder. It's actually going a bit deeper, but you are more aware of the upper bass in the Flip 5. And the Flip 5 does sound smoother. In a straight A to B comparison, however, I have to say, when you're sitting in front of the Charge 3s, it's still a pleasant listen. I know a lot of headbangers are not going to like the Charge 3. A lot of people hate on it. It's probably the most divisive speaker that I've personally been aware of since I've been buying these portable speakers. Now, that's at 60%. It could be just the volume scale is different on the two speakers. Flat out, maximum volume. quite simply, the two Charge 3s in stereo plays louder than the Flip 5s. Charge 3 goes louder than the Flip 5, even though they are both rated 20 watts. On average, by just over 2.3 decibels, quite a bit for the Charge 3s over the Flip 5s. In terms of absolute peaks, basically 3 decibels higher peak on the Charge 3 in the bass. 81 Hz minus 22 decibels, Charge 3 minus 24 decibels. So a couple of decibels, minus 24.2 decibels, the same point for the Flip 5. So in terms of absolute loudness, the Charge 3 wins. Flip 5's rated also at 20 watts, but the Charge 3, the older Charge 3 still goes louder. In fact, it goes louder than the Charge 4, and that's rated at 30 watts. Charge 3 also has a little bit more bass. It goes a little bit lower overall, as well as being louder. But it's mids first. The Flip 5 rolled off a bit in the mids, and that is the major difference. Charge 3's mid first, Flip 5's recessed in the mids, and ultimately doesn't go as loud as the Charge 3's. So I really think with these speakers, it's Marmite. You're going to like it or you're going to hate it. You're going to hate the forward mids of the Charge 3. It might sound harsh to you. And of course, a lot of it's going to depend on the type of music you play. And there's going to be a lot of people saying, well, the Flip 5 is much smoother. However, the Flip 5s do have a recessed mids. It's not overly accurate at all. The Charge 3 is over forward in the mids. Also not accurate in that sense. And they're quite opposites in that sense. That's why I think you're going to like one or the other. Doesn't make one better or worse than the other. But the Charge 3 ultimately does go deeper. It does have a deeper bass, but even at maximum volume, when you have the volume differences, and clearly the Charge 3 has a bigger bass, the Flip 5 still has the same amount of upper bass, say 150 Hz, as the Charge 3. So very much an upper bass, warmish bass sounding speaker, the Flip 5, making up for where it can't go that much lower. You know, there is limitations in its size. You've got bigger drivers, 50mm, if I remember off the top of my head, for the Charge 3. It's a bigger driver, although you'd have to work out the area again, because obviously it's a racetrack kind of driver. It's not a straight apples to oranges, or apples to apples, I think I should have said. But 20 watts goes louder, 3 years older than rated on paper 20 watts. Doesn't go as loud, but it's a smoother listen. And I'm still wondering, if I had a pair of the grey ones, it would be even smoother, wouldn't it? Because it would be a better match, and it does sound better than the CS one. So I hope you got something out of my video. All those Charge 3 lovers can say, see, 20 watts, but it still goes louder than your Flip 5, and I'm still happy with my Charge 3. People are going to have the Flip 5 and say, yeah, mine is a much smoother listen. It's much more practical. It's much smaller. Almost goes as loud as yours, has better upper bass. So I think it's a win-win no matter which speaker you got and which side of the fence you're going to sit. However, the takeaway for this video is a pair of Flip 5s is more than twice as good as a single Flip 5. If you've got the money to spend for a second Flip 5, and you definitely want something in this package, because you can certainly get better value for your money than this speaker. But if you like the JBL Flip 5 package, the size of it, the cylindrical, the ruggedness, it's waterproof, blah, 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 you can drop it, you can knock it, then the Flip 5 is still a decent buy, especially as a pair if you can get the pair. So, thank you for watching.
UK